Hi, this is Kogito, and I'm back with another Through the Ages video. So in the last video, we saw that as a result of my victory against El Chupacabra in our two-player game, I am now in a great position to potentially win this group. I am only 0.5 points behind El Chupacabra, who has finished with all their games, and I'm 3.5 points ahead of DB Starman with one less game to play. So I just need to get 1 point in any of my remaining 3 games, and I'll finish ahead of El Chupacabra. And DB Starman, I still need to worry about a bit, but I'm also obviously in a good position to finish ahead of them. So after that victory, I was feeling pretty confident, but of course it's definitely not over yet. I need to actually get those points to finish ahead of El Chupacabra and to fend off DB Starman. So I need to, lock in and be sure to do my best in all my remaining games. In this video, that game will be a 2-player game between me and Sakic, who has their own reason to care about this game. If Sakic wants to potentially finish ahead of DB Starman and avoid elimination, this 2-player game is probably critical for that. So this is going to be a very important game for both of us. And without further ado, let's take a look. In this game, I'm playing first, and we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And in this 2-player game, you always want to look at the cultural leaders in H2, and this time we have both of the big 2 ones, Shakespeare and Bach. So this game will likely revolve around who is able to best make use of whichever one of these they manage to get. And because Shakespeare is in the game, that means printing press will be a very important technology to get to prepare for him. There are some other potentially good leaders in H2, and but not good enough to outrank Bach or Shakespeare. There are some notable wonders, though, in H2, a number of them, so those might be good to prepare for. As for H3, there is the Hollywood to potentially even cash in on Shakespeare and Bach even further. Only Marlena as a theater leader, though, in H3, so she might be contested. There's some other possible options for H3, though. Pierre and Einstein with Internet, Einstein with Spaceflight. Notable, Gandhi is also in this deck, meaning that an aggressive strategy is even worse than it normally is in 2-player, so that's another reason to really prioritize Shakespeare and Bach here. As for Age 1, there's a number of really good wonders in Age 1. The leaders look to mostly want to be elected towards the end of Age 1, notably, with the possible exception of Michelangelo, especially with St. Peter's Basilica. As for my turn, I didn't want to take Alexander because Hammurabi is here. Sakic can't take him, so I will definitely want to take Hammurabi as my leader. As a result, I rather prefer taking one of these wonders. I mean, I could take a yellow card and maybe hope for Stonehenge or Roman roads to come out that I could take with Hammurabi, but that was pretty speculative. I think Colosseum is also pretty good. I actually recently watched Weidenbaum's tier list video where he really ragged on Colosseum, which I think is a little unfair to it. I think it's, in my opinion, it's a better wonder than, I don't want to say that I know more about this game than Weidenbaum, but I've had some success with the Colosseum. And I think in a 2-player game, he mentioned that the issue with Colosseum plus Hammurabi is that with Hammurabi, you often want to do a monarchy revolution, but with the Colosseum, that would then give you 4 military actions, which is maybe not necessary or not as big a deal as going from 2 to 3. On the other hand, in a 2-player game, I think that's less of a big deal because there's only 1 copy of Monarchy. So if Sakic gets that copy, then I would really want the 3rd military action anyway. I also think there's some good synergy with this, with potentially Barbarossa in particular. I could aim to get is great synergy with the Colosseum, so I was pretty comfortable taking it here. I thought that the Hanging Gardens could also definitely be considered. That's also good with Barbarossa. And in general, it's also, maybe arguably the worst HA wonder, but I think it's still pretty good. Definitely better to have than nothing. And in a 2-player game where Ravages of Time is less likely, it's probably better. So I could definitely see a strong case for taking Hanging Gardens here instead of Colosseum, but I thought that Colosseum was better with Hammurabi, again, given that there's only 1 copy of Monarchy in the game. Sakic takes Richland. There are some other options, maybe Alexander plus a yellow card, or Hanging Gardens plus a yellow card. Hanging Gardens plus Alexander, probably not great, but even though I'll probably get Hammurabi, Sakic can probably get Aristotle, who's probably better than Alexander the Great, going second, and Sakic is probably hoping for a better AJ wonder than Hanging Gardens. So from that perspective, the yellow card, Richland, is like, it's a good yellow card, so I think this is also defensible. Notably, this also keeps Hammurabi on 2 civil actions for me, which is important for Sakic, but that doesn't stop me from taking him. I think he's by far the best leader on this road. The extra civil action is well worth it. I also just do normal things. Unfortunately, because he's here, I couldn't take the Engineering Genius while also building my mine this turn. So that means Sakich would get the Engineering Genius. Not ideal, but I valued Hammurabi over this Engineering Genius. Especially not, you know, Sakich might get it with Roman roads and then complete Roman roads quickly, but I thought that getting Hammurabi was more important than stopping Sakich from doing that. Especially since Sakich hadn't taken a leader yet either. Now Sakich takes Aristotle for one civil action, as well as the Engineering Genius. That makes sense, as well as doing normal stuff. Notably, on my turn, I put the Roman roads on this part of the row, and as I mentioned in my previous video, in a two-player game, you want to leave the important cards for your opponent on this slot, because they either have to take it for 2 civil actions, or it'll be discarded on your turn. So Sakich chose to do other things instead of taking the Roman roads, but that's less viable because the Universitas was just revealed, and Sakich can pretty easily take the Universitas as their first wonder, completed probably pretty quickly with the Engineering Genius, so that's less important, but it still at least limited Sakich's options a little bit. As for me, I choose not to see the border conflict, even though it wouldn't put me even though a resource event wouldn't put me in corruption, as we see. I just wasn't sure yet that I would be able to win this border conflict, so I didn't want to commit to it. Now, that being said, I was willing to take Barbarossa here. There are a couple of reasons for this. First of all, I think I'm in a pretty good position to get Barbarossa. First of all, I think Barbarossa in general is actually, maybe counterintuitively a bit, but I think he pairs well with Hammurabi. Mainly because Barbarossa is a leader you usually want to elect at the end of Age 1, and Hammurabi is usually a leader you want to keep through most of Age 1. So keeping Hammurabi for most of Age 1 and then electing Barbarossa at the end I think is pretty good, and Barbarossa can also catch you up. The weakness of Hammurabi is it can be hard to build up your military, but Barbarossa can really catch you up on your military really quickly. So for those 2 reasons, I think it's actually a pretty good synergy. In addition, I think I'm set up pretty well for the Barbarossa with the Colosseum having good synergy with him. I don't have any food going yet, but in a 2-player game you usually want to get irrigation and maybe get it going early anyway because it's risky to wait for selective breeding. So I thought that I was in a pretty good position to get Barbarossa. In addition, I thought he was probably one of the better leaders I could potentially get. Jan Žižka and Gutenberg are both on the road, but Jan Žižka's extra military action is less necessary for me here. I didn't have a tactic yet, so I don't know if I'd have a tactic that would even work well with him. Gutenberg could also potentially be good. I think we saw in my previous 2-player game he did a fair amount for me, but it's also kind of risky. I don't necessarily know if I'll be able to use him well, if there'll be... I mean, there's probably a good chance that either Printing Press or Alchemy, both of which I might want, would be available on the row at the end of Age 1, so waiting for Gutenberg could also be justifiable. But another major reason to get Barbarossa here is that I don't really have much else good to do with my turn. We'll see what else I actually do with my turn, which is build a lab and take the Engineering Genius, which I think partly is useful for me, and it's also, I think, an important denial for Sakich, because it would make him getting the Universitas even easier. But after doing this, we can see that if I didn't take Barbarossa, I wouldn't really have much else good to do on my turn. I could potentially take the rich land and increase my population, but that would put me in consumption early. I could take the cultural heritage, but that would be a pretty severe civil action cost. So I could maybe do something else to fit in the swordsman or the warfare on my turn, but warfare I think is not necessary with Colosseum. Swordsman for 3 when there's 2 copies I think isn't good. So if I didn't take Barbarossa, my other options for spending my civil actions don't look the best. So another reason to take him this turn is just, this is a turn where I kind of have civil actions that I need to spend, and so I felt like this was a good opportunity to take a leader with civil actions, as opposed to later in Age 1, where another leader might show up, but maybe I'll have other better things to do with those civil actions than take this rich land and increase my population going into consumption, for example. So because I think Barbarossa is good for me, and because I didn't have much else I would rather do on this turn, I was comfortable taking him here, even though it's so early in Age 1. I draw Dark Ages, a potentially suitable event, especially with Sakich having Aristotle. Sakich sees, reveals the development of settlement. Does indeed take the Universitas, not a surprise, and takes Jan Žižka, also not a big surprise. He is a good leader. Sakich could potentially wait for, I think Michelangelo would also be a good leader, maybe not in Sakich's position, but if Sakich could get a St. Peter's Basilica, for example, but that's also kind of risky. I also might get the St. Peter's Basilica, so Yazuska is a good leader and also might potentially pressure me as Hammurabi. Or if I get Barbarossa, he could compete with strength there. So, also available for one. Sakic builds one stage in the Investas to get out of corruption, and notably takes the rich land instead of electing Aristotle. This decision I'm a bit more questionable of. It's true that Aristotle isn't technically doing anything for Sakic this turn because they're not taking any techs, but it's still spending a civil action this turn instead of next turn. It's also filling up Sakic's hand. And so I feel that maybe Sakic doesn't have the civil actions to spare on this rich land when they have a lot of other things they want to do, probably in the short term. Also, interestingly, Sakic chooses to build a stage of the Universitas instead of building the mine. Maybe they have plans for this population. So, interesting turn from Sakic. But the rich land could definitely be useful for them. It also maybe will make it easier for them to get irons quicker or coals, potentially. I do see the Dark Ages. Sakic, even though Sakic didn't build the lab, they do have Universitas, they do have Aristotle. I thought it was probably more likely that they would lose more science to the Dark Ages than I would. I also just wanted to get something into the event deck, so Sakic didn't own it completely. Reveal development of science, and that gives me an option here that I choose to go for, which is taking this iron for 3 civil actions. Now, there are 2 main reasons I think that I took this iron here, even though it's an expensive civil action cost. First of all, obviously it's good for me. I am able to upgrade 1 mine this turn and get those irons going in mid-age 1, which is nice. But I think another reason was to deny the iron to Sakic, because we can see that if Sakic is able to get it and play it with the rich land, they can potentially get 2 iron upgrades this turn, which I felt would be pretty strong. However, I think I might not have adequately considered the fact that Sakic's hand is full. So in order for Sakic to actually take the iron, they would have to play Aristotle, then take the iron. So if I left the iron for 2 civil actions, for example, then Sakic would not actually be able to get any iron upgrades in this turn, because playing Aristotle, taking the iron and playing it would use up all of their civil actions. So I actually, for that reason, I think it would also be good and maybe better not to take this iron here and just to only take 1 card from a non-discard slot to make sure it's only available for 2 civil actions. One possibility of doing this, as an example, could have been to finish the Colosseum. I am able to do that with the Engineering Genius. And then with my remaining 2 civil actions, I could possibly take the Breakthrough, maybe the Alchemy, maybe, for example, the Theology plus a Swordsman. I don't have a tactic yet, so Swordsman would be a nice card to have just as a guarantee that I can use infantry tactics well. That might have been better to do one of those things. I think both the Breakthrough and the Alchemy could be good for me. And on the other hand, even if Sakic isn't able to upgrade the irons this turn, letting Sakic have the card in their hand this turn would still be good for them. They could potentially play Aristotle, take the iron, and build their lab, for example, to get out of corruption. And I think that would still be a good turn for them, and they could plan to get their iron upgrades in next turn. They would still be able to get 2 upgrades in next turn with the rich lands. So I think it's also defensible to take the iron this turn because I am able to get an upgrade myself, and I deny Sakic from having it. The second copy of iron might be late in age 1, and it'll take a while for Sakic to upgrade. So I think both taking it this turn and just making sure it's on this slot and taking another card would both, and finishing the Colosseum instead, are both defensible plays. I draw an aggression. Sakic elects Aristotle and takes a Knights, which is an important card. Makes sense. They could have maybe left it because there's a second copy that they could get, but they don't know when the second copy will be around, and maybe they didn't have much better to spend their civil actions on this turn anyway, although they could have, well, they didn't have enough rocks to finish the Universitas, but they could have built a second lab instead, potentially. Anyway. Now, I am, though, do want to take this copy of Code of Laws. Now, I am a little pressed for science, so the Code of Laws might be difficult to afford. However, in a 2-player game, especially with Sakic having Aristotle plus Universitas, I thought Sakic would definitely be able to afford it pretty easily. And so if I left the Code of Laws for 1 civil action for Sakic, I thought that would definitely be way too strong. So for that reason, I think it's important for me to take the Code of Laws. And also, being able to take this Breakthrough will make it easier to afford the Code of Laws as well. Now, so I think that these 2 cards are definitely right to take. The question is what else to do with my turn. Well, another thing I think that's pretty obvious is to upgrade an Iron Mine. I am still in corruption though, and to get out of it, I need to increase my population. Again, I don't see the border conflict because even though I have Barbarossa, I don't have a tactic in my hand yet. I'm only drawing 1 card a turn, so I wasn't convinced. I would be able to win this border conflict. I could have maybe seeded it anyway, but it would have. I don't know. It would have been risky. I think this turn is pretty straightforward. I draw new deposits, which could definitely be a good card for me. Sakich finishes the Universalitas with the Engineering Genius, takes an Irrigation, important card, and finally builds the second lab. This looks like a good turn to me. Right. Oh, I forgot to mention on my previous turn, if you remember, there were 2 copies of Breakthrough, and I took one that wasn't in the discard slot because I wanted to deny Sakich the opportunity to take the second Breakthrough. And there, as we can see on Sakich's turn, taking an extra card from the row didn't make a difference. It only put the Knights here for 1 civil action, which Sakich already had. So I think it was definitely right to take the Breakthrough that wasn't in the discard slot. Anyway, I do see the new deposits. Like I said, I have Ion Upgrade, Sakich didn't. I felt that it would be a strong event for me. And I revealed Development of Planning. The options for this are Warfare, Markets, and Crafts. I have a free population that's not unhappy, so I think in that situation, the Department of Warfare is definitely much better than Markets Crafts, because it's the same amount of resource gain, but it saves me a military action. I finished upgrading my mines again, and I have enough rocks this turn to upgrade my last mine, as well as finish the Colosseum with my Engineering Genius. So I think that is right to do. I mean, I could wait for next turn to finish the Colosseum, but I think I don't have that much. I don't really have. It's the most powerful thing I can do with my remaining 3 rocks. I also don't really. The only card I really desperately want on this row is this copy of Knights. The Irrigation. Sakich has the first copy, and it's not going to be discarded in their turn, so I don't need to take this. The Bread and Circuses could be a card I want to take. I mean, I don't currently have a Happy Face solution in my hand. The Colosseum offers me 1, but I will need a second Happy Face probably when the age ends, especially with Barbarossa. So the Bread and Circuses could also definitely be considered as an alternative to finishing Colosseum. But I think there should be other options for me to fix my Happy Faces. St. Peter's Basilica, for example. It is kind of risky, though. I mean, maybe I should have taken the Bread and Circuses just to be safe. I am having some hand size issues, though. Well, I could elect Barbarossa, but I'm not using his ability this turn. And the Knights is definitely an important card. I think it might be more of an unfortunate situation. But at least with the Colosseum, while it is true that I'll need a Happy Face solution pretty soon, I might potentially be able to just have this idle worker be unhappy. And while that would make me vulnerable to a rebellion, with Barbarossa, rebellion is less. It's still bad, but it's less bad than it would otherwise be. So maybe the Colosseum is at least enough to tide me over until I get a H2 Happy Face solution, or if I get the St. Peter's Basilica potentially, which I have a pretty good chance to. Sakich hasn't upgraded Iron Mines yet, so it might be a little difficult for them to afford that wonder. I draw 2 tactics, finally. Both of which are potentially usable, as we can see. Sakich Seeds reveals the development of Civil Life. Sakich also takes the development of Warfare and spends development of Civil Life to play Knights. That makes sense. One card I didn't take was the Monarchy. It was a little expensive. I guess that was another option to finishing Colosseum, was taking Monarchy, but it's late in Age 1 anyway, so the Monarchy Revolution is a lot less valuable than it normally is. And I also figured I could potentially wait to do a revolution with Barbarossa, who is also a good leader to do a revolution with. Sakich, it does leave Sakich the opportunity to take it for 2 civil actions, though, which they do with Aristotle, which makes sense, even though it's a little military action overkill with the Jan Ziska. The 5th civil action might be important, as well as the urban building limit. They also take that Bread and Circuses that I didn't, elect Jan Ziska, play their own fighting band, and take a Patriotism. Frugality could also potentially be considered, but they're all short of rocks, so Patriotism makes sense. So I understand this turn. I do end up seeding my border conflict now. As we'll see, I had a plan for being stronger than Sakich, and I also knew that neither of the cards I seeded was a strength event. So even though it is risky seeding when I'm not strongest, I thought, you know, there's a 50-50 chance that one of my events will be revealed that isn't a strength event, and Sakach also, the events they seeded might not have been strength events, so it was a little bit risky though, actually, and also I'm going to be spending on my military actions, so looking at this in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have seeded, actually. I think that was too risky. Regardless, though, I do reveal my new deposits, so me seeding was, it did pay off for me. I was rewarded for it, maybe unfairly. I do elect Barbarossa now that the age is about to end, and I use his ability 2 times to get 2 knights, as well as upgrade 2 farms, so I'm putting to use those extra rocks from the new deposits. As you can see, my plan here is to use the heavy cavalry tactic. I will be able to afford it. Now, I might have to disband one of my warriors. Actually, if I want to put this into knights, I'd have to disband one of my warriors to get out of rebellion, which is not ideal. I mean, at least it was a free warrior I got from Development of Warfare, so not as bad as it could be. But I think that while that's not ideal, the heavy cavalry is so much better than the fighting band that it's definitely well worth the cost to set myself up for heavy cavalry. And we can see Barbarossa and Colosseum sort of teaming up to make heavy cavalry more affordable than it normally is for me. For my final civil action, I do take the printing press, as we saw earlier. Because there's Shakespeare in the game, I think printing press is a necessary card to make him a possible leader for you. Because there's only 1 copy of journalism, you can't depend on getting the journalism. So if you want to use Shakespeare, you really want to have a printing press in your hand. I do think this was the right turn for me to do, because the event deck has flipped, so it is definitely time for me to start building up my strength situation with Barbarossa. I don't think any other card on the row was worth taking. Age 2 begins. Sakach doesn't seed, instead plays the Brennan Circuses to fix the happy face situation. Also plays the patriotism to build a knight, as well as play the phalanx tactics, so now they are stronger than me, as well as take a swordsman. It's for my turn, so we can see, you know, well, I guess me not seeing the last turn wouldn't have made a difference because I'm weaker than Sakach this turn anyway, so it is what it is. Now, I do definitely want the St. Peter's Basilica. I'm in a position where it's viable for me for multiple reasons. I don't have a happy face solution in my hand yet. There's the organized religion on the row, but it's not the best one, especially since I would ideally like to operate off of operas for my happy faces anyway, so St. Peter's Basilica helps a lot with that. It also helps me, it also has good synergy with the Colosseum, because of the Colosseum happy face. So I think this is definitely right to take. Unfortunately, I am missing 1 civil action to finish it immediately. Now I do, however, want to complete my heavy cavalry tactics so that I'm stronger than Sakach, and we'll see that I will end up disbanding a warrior, so that I'm out of rebellion. Now, as for my remaining 2 civil actions in this turn, I am out of corruption now, I'm pretty sure, so it's a matter of taking cards from the row. Yeah, so I disband the warriors in Northern Rebellion. And so, as for what to do with my remaining 2 civil actions, the frugality, you know, maybe, although with Barbarossa, I probably will want to just use I will probably want to put my food into Barbarossa and not into popping, so I'm not so sure about the frugality. Right. Sorry, I was looking at something. I could maybe... Richland, probably not good for me. Cartography, I don't have a lot of science. Drama, I'd probably rather wait for operas anyway, so... None of these cards in the row were particularly appealing to me, so I decided to just spend my last 2 civil actions building 2 stages of St. Peter's Basilica in advance. I also unfortunately don't draw any cards this turn because of that disband. Anyway, a rifleman is revealed for Sakach, so they're able to take it. A little sad, but because I'm on heavy cavalry, you can definitely ride into most of H2 and still feel good about it, so it's not as bad for Sakach to get this rifleman as it would normally be. They do upgrade 2 immediately to be stronger than me, which probably suggests that they seeded at least 1 strength event, as well as take another rich land and the iron. So my turn, so I do want to finish the St. Peter's Basilica, fixing my happy face situation, giving me some extra culture. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. Question is what else to do. Well, after playing the Code of Laws. Now, there are some options. Selective breeding, probably not. I mean, I already upgraded my irrigations. Sakech has irrigation, so it's not necessarily an important cut. I mean, if I have a free civil action, then sure, but I don't think it's a necessary card to take. I don't need the happy face buildings yet. I don't need to take, I don't need this drama, especially since operas are already on the row. I don't need to take this opera because it won't be discarded, so I can just take whichever opera that Sakech doesn't take if Sakech takes one. I don't really need the rich land with efficient upgrade, probably. I don't even know if I'll upgrade building again in this game. So I think it kinda... You know, I don't want to take these leaders. I'm waiting for Bach and Shakespeare. Revolution idea, maybe, but Age 2 Revolution idea for 3 civil actions isn't great, even though I do need science right now. So I think it probably comes down to one of these wonders, and I think, rather than any of those, I think the Statue of Liberty is probably best. Suez Canal is a better wonder usually, but I don't have a colony in my hand, and I didn't see any colonies. So I don't want to risk taking the Suez Canal when it's very possible that it could do literally nothing for me. Now, the Statue of Liberty is currently not giving me any culture because I'm still in despotism, but the extra yellow tokens it gives could definitely be very valuable, especially with Barbarossa. And I expected to, you know, at some point get a government form going, and then it'll start giving me culture. It's a little disappointing to take this instead of maybe Harvard College, but I also don't know when Harvard College will come out. The Statue of Liberty is available right now at a time when I don't really have much else to spend my civil actions on anyway, so I think this is a good take. Maybe, though, I should have built a 4th knight to be stronger than Sakech. Yeah, I think I definitely should have. That was a mistake. I think I was waiting to build units with Barbarossa's ability and to put these into urban buildings, but that's probably looking ahead a little too much, and the short-term value of being stronger than Sakech would have been more important. Anyway, I draw War and Technology, Refugees, and the Vast Territory. So, of course I draw Vast Territory immediately after not taking the Suez Canal. Anyway, Sakech Seeds reveals an immigration. This I had not seeded, but I was happy to see, obviously, with me after. I was happy to see that it was revealed after I finished St. Peter's Basilica, so the order of the event deck, at least these first 2 cards, was highly fortunate for me. There's no doubt about that. Anyway, Sakech does develop irrigation instead of taking selective breeding. I guess they're probably worried about their science, especially since they took the coal, so they're probably thinking of spending their science and rocks on coal instead of selective breeding. It's, maybe iron selective breeding would be better than irrigation coal, but it's a little hard to say. Well, there's the railroad on the row, though, so Sakech might be aiming to get coal with railroads. Anyway, they upgrade they upgrade 2 farms with the rich lands and take a rich land 2. Yeah, that's probably fine. However, what is a little more questionable to me is they didn't take either copy of Opera, which means that they don't have drama or opera in their hand, so they won't be able to make good use of Bach or Shakespeare. I think that was a definite mistake on Sakech's part, a potentially game-losing one, frankly. I think an opera is a critical card in a 2-player game, especially with Bach and Shakespeare in the game. I do seed my refugees, because I felt pretty confident. I felt relatively confident. I mean, I don't know, maybe I was overvaluing the heavy cavalry a little too much, and also not considering, like, how long the event tech might take to move. I think seeding this probably was also a mistake. I mean, Vast Territory, I don't have any bonus cards in my hand, so that's a tough seed. But refugees, seeding when I'm weakest, I probably also wanted to get the Dark Ages out when it wouldn't hit me. So that's another reason to seed potentially, but it's definitely still risky, especially since Sakech is playing like they seeded the strength event. I think that seed was a mistake, probably. Anyway, the Dark Ages is revealed, which doesn't affect me, but does cause Sakech to lose a science. Not the end of the world. I think because they're probably waiting to spend their science and coal, which they couldn't play this turn anyway, but better than nothing. I do use Barbarossa's ability to get another knight to be stronger than Sakich again. I do take one of these operas for reasons already stated. And we can see that Shakespeare is actually on the row right now, so I definitely like to see that. I'm not going to take him this turn, because instead I am going to take the revolutionary idea and the strategy. I am still short on science, so I think the revolutionary idea, now that it's available for one civil action, I think it's definitely worth it. And the strategy is also, I think, worth it at this point, because I have opera, printing press, and I'm going to get Shakespeare soon. I mean, Sakich pretty much can't take Shakespeare, because they miss on the operas. I was confident that I would be able to get a much stronger culture production going than Sakich very soon. And so, given that, I was basically thinking the only way that I could lose this game is if Sakich gets a really big war against me, and the strategy should help me out a lot with stopping that from happening. I do develop the printing press with my last civil action, because I'm going to do it next turn anyway. I didn't have anything better to do with that last civil action. And to get out of corruption, I build a 5th knight. And I draw an Iconoclasm, which I probably won't see since I'm getting Shakespeare, though it's nice to have at least, especially since I know it's not on the deck. Sakich takes Napoleon, so it looks like they are aiming for a military strategy themselves, especially with the railroads, taking the railroads. So this play makes sense from a long-term point of view. It does mean that they are in corruption, though. That's on the other hand, they could have gone out of corruption by playing the iron and upgrading it, but they took the coal, so they're playing on coal. That said, being in corruption is not great. Maybe that's the reason why they should have perhaps gone for iron last turn instead of aiming for coal, because then they would be able to guarantee themselves not being in corruption this turn. Maybe it's also well, okay, they spent the rich lands last turn to open up hand space, but yeah, you know, corruption, not the end of the world, but not something you want to be in, obviously. Anyway, I don't cede because I'm weakest. I do take Shakespeare, though, obviously. I'm in a very good position for him. Play the revolutionary idea. Build a library. The revolutionary idea lets me play an opera and build that, too. So I'm able to take Shakespeare and also get him going this turn. So now I am going to be able to open up a pretty big culture advantage over Sakich. Unfortunately, I'm not able to become stronger than him. Or I actually am able to become stronger than him by disbanding my second warrior and building a knights. Again, disbanding warriors, not usually where you want to be, but I thought that it was more important to be stronger than Sakich than to keep the warrior around. Doing this does mean that I miss out on the cannon, but there will be a second copy coming. It also means I miss out on the cavalryman, but there'll be a second copy coming, so missing out on this breakthrough does hurt a lot more, but I thought that getting the Shakespeare pair going this turn was more important than taking the breakthrough. It's a close decision though, probably. And instead of playing and building the opera, I think taking the breakthrough and maybe the urban growth, for example. So instead of playing revolutionary idea, playing opera, building opera, I could have spent those 3 civil actions on breakthrough and urban growth. Other than I might have been in corruption, actually. That cost me 6. So yeah, I would have been in corruption if I hadn't built the opera. So that's another reason to build the opera instead of taking the breakthrough. I also maybe, well, I could definitely use the science and the strategy, but I probably wouldn't be able to play the breakthrough next turn anyway, so. But it would definitely be, it's definitely a card I don't like to miss out on. So that's an arguable reason to look for a different way to play this turn. Anyway, Sakich is able to play coal this turn, takes that cannon, upgrades 1 coal, increases the population, and chooses to build a stage of the railroad instead of upgrading a second coal mine. This decision confused me. I don't see a good reason. I guess probably they're planning on finishing the railroad next turn, which would be equivalent to which would be actually +1 resource over upgrading coal mine, and also get me stronger than me. So I guess that makes sense. If they want to be stronger than me next turn, they need to finish the railroad next turn. So that's why they did it this way. But since I'm stronger, I do want to cede. I did at least draw a bonus card now, so I maybe have a chance to win this vast territory. but I didn't want to see the iconoclasm. Even though Sakich has Napoleon, I thought that the extra culture I'll get from Shakespeare is better than the extra strength Sakich gets from Napoleon. And we can see that the order of the event deck continues to favor me because the Reign of Terror is revealed while I am strongest. So that's definitely quite good for me. I build one stage with the Statue of Liberty to get out of corruption. I don't really have a better way to get out of corruption, except maybe destroy a lab to build an opera or a library, but I didn't think that was good. So I did this instead. Aside from that, all I can really do is take some cards. So the question is, which cards do I want to take? And I could potentially take the Republic, though I wouldn't be able to play it next turn. The Republic would be a fine game. Also, Sakich is on Monarchy, so I figured that Sakich probably wouldn't take the Republic themselves anyway, so it was fine for me to not take it. The other tech cards in the row, such as Architecture and Navigation, would be expensive. Maybe a Scientific Method. Well, probably not Scientific Method, because I'm aiming to... The urban buildings I want are these and not labs. And the Architecture might be nice, but I'm also feeling the science crunch pretty severely right now. So I felt that I probably wouldn't have the 6 science to spare on the Architecture. Also less important with Shakespeare giving me a rock discount on my urban buildings anyway. So for all those reasons, I decided that I didn't really want any of these tech cards, and instead I took the yellow cards. Move of Nationalism, expensive for 3, but I think could definitely be well worth it. Like I said, at this point, I'm going to be opening a huge culture lead against Sakich, so the only hope Sakich will have of beating me is getting a big war against me. Move of Nationalism will make that less likely. And the urban growth could definitely also be useful. I mean, I am still an Iron Mine, so even though these are less expensive than they usually are, getting an opera for 3 instead of 6, definitely nice. Especially since I'm going to be spending 5 next turn to finish Statue of Liberty, probably. I draw Hussars, which, nice to see, this should be a good tactic for me, as well as an International Negotiations and another bonus card. Sakich does finish the railroad, and plays a cannon, so it looks like they have a cannon tactic. Chooses to do this instead of upgrading. Oh, they didn't have their rocks physical mine, so yeah, this turn makes sense. Age 3 begins. I forgot to look at our situations at the end of Age 1, but I'll do so now. So we can see that as a result of me having Shakespeare and Sakich not having a culture leader, I currently have 13 culture, and I'm going to be getting more and more each turn. So I definitely have a heavy culture advantage. And in exchange, Sakich has +1 science production and +2 rock production on me. The food production is going to be about the same. I'll have a bit of a yellow bank advantage when I finish the statue. Sakich does, though, have the strength advantage, obviously, with Napoleon. So Sakich has a bit of an economic advantage, a bit of a strength advantage over me. But I think at a 2-player game, my culture advantage is much bigger than that and more important. So I was feeling happy. I was feeling pretty confident with my position at this point in the game. But there's still a lot of things can happen in Age 3, so I can't let my foot up the gas. I need to make sure to bring it home. I don't see because I'm weakest. Instead, I finish the Statue of Liberty, and I still have enough rocks to build a second library. And I was happy doing it this way anyway, because I wanted 12 science next turn to be able to play the Kanmon. I did take the Kanmon this turn. I didn't want to give Sakich an opportunity to potentially cut it from me. And I didn't really want any of these other cards. I mean, Navigation could certainly be nice, but I don't think I'd have the science for it. Harvard College he didn't have the civil actions for. Passing up Cannon does hurt. It'll be discount on my turn. I mean, so I think the other major option this turn would be Cannon or possibly Cavalryman for my Hussars. But I basically figured at this point that I was going to, depending on the Hussars, probably, as my H2 tactic. Sakich looks like they probably have defensive army or Napoleonic army, which would be difficult for me to get going anyway. So I thought that the cannon in this game wasn't a necessary card for me. Taking the Cavalryman could definitely be considered, but I guess I figured that Sakich was more likely to cut the Kanmon than to cut the Cavalryman. I discard the cards that the Aggression and the Iconoclasm and another card that I forget. And I draw an Impact of Culture, which is definitely a very lucky draw for me, as well as a Modern Army, which I probably won't use, and another bonus card, which is another good draw for me. And Sakich declares a war over territory against me. Not you know, not ideal, but not unexpected with Saga having Napoleon. And they do have a Napoleonic army, so they're able to get up to 30 strength, which is a pretty good amount at this stage in the game. They also take an efficient upgrade for that coal, as well as an engineering genius. Luckily, they don't take the cavalryman. I do see the impact of culture. I mean, I definitely want that in the deck, and I also would like to have it revealed relatively sooner rather than later, in case Sakach finds a way to get more culture production. But I just, you know, I want to see it anyway. I probably am not going to be stronger than Sakach at all for the rest of the game regardless, so I was comfortable sitting at that turn. I real border conflict, not actually the worst event, because I didn't really want this lab anymore anyway, so I it almost kind of saved me a civil action of destroying the lab. Anyway, I do play the Kanmon this turn. I want those civil actions, I want the urban building limit. Significant science cost, obviously, but I was willing to spend it. I could have... I could have done a revolution, though, because I do happen to not be in corruption this turn. Let's see what I do with my civil actions instead of declaring a revolution. So I built a third library. I chose this over the opera because I wanted to potentially be able to either play the cavalryman next turn, I will take it, or play the strategy in 2 turns. So I thought that going from 3 to 4 science production was pretty important. It is a much lower amount of culture production, though, because it's only +1 culture production. This would be +5, because it would be the opera plus completing another Shakespeare pair. So a difference of +4 culture production is pretty big, but I think I figured, again, that I'm going to be having so much more culture than Sakach anyway, that getting even more culture is maybe overkill, and it's more important to get some science so that I can defend myself. It's probably a close decision. Anyway, I play the Hussars. I also decided to do this instead of building unit, just because, or maybe building cavalryman, because I thought that, I think I probably went through it, and while, okay, let's see, I had 6 plus, I had potentially 12 this turn, though, but if I played the Kanmon, then I wouldn't be able to play the cavalryman. So the only way I could play the cavalryman is if I leave myself on 3 military actions, so I'd only be able to upgrade 3 of these, and so I don't think that would be enough to defend anyway. So I figured instead just play the Hussars. This means that Sakach will only be able to take 2 yellow tokens instead of 3, and so I thought that was this was good enough to make the war not completely devastating, especially since I have the statue. So it's comfortable just doing this for my defense. And I take the Air Forces. Now, Air Forces, less critical card to take as soon as it shows up in a 2-player game, because there are 2 copies. But again, I thought that the only way I would lose this game is if Sakach got a huge war against me, and one potential way Sakach could get a huge war against me is if they have Air Forces and I don't. And so I thought that it was, in this, even though it's a 2-player game, I thought in this situation it was important for me to get the first copy of Air Forces. And I also take a reserves and a cavalryman. This cavalryman may be a little questionable. I think I figured, well, it's better with the Hussars, but this breakthrough is also looking very good considering how many science issues I'm having. So I think, while the cavalryman could potentially be good, I understand because of Hussars, and it's cheaper due to Colosseum. I think that breakthrough would also be very good for me in this situation. So I think maybe breakthrough would have been better than cavalryman. I think maybe just doing the Kanmon Revolution would have been better. So basically, what I gained from not doing the revolution was +1 science and culture, as well as a copy of reserves in the Air Forces. Air Forces, you know, is good to take, but as we discussed, it maybe isn't critically important for me to have these Air Forces. And so I basically got like 1 culture and 4 rocks or food instead of but that being said, those reserves is actually quite important for me because I will be able to use it next turn to get a free population put into opera. So given that, probably not doing the revolution was better, because this reserves is actually going to be really good for me to be able to play it for food and increase my population next turn. So looking at it that way, yeah, I think, and that's why I took the reserves with the breakthroughs that way. So I think doing this turn was probably right, except for this cavalryman. I think maybe the breakthrough would have been better. I chose not to take more Lena, notably because I thought that the mainly the reserves and possibly the cavalryman, but mainly the reserves and the air forces was more important. Sakich is not really in a position to use Marlena, at least not anytime soon. I mean, maybe if they get in movies, they could get some movies with Marlena. So that was also a potential. Like, instead of taking the air forces, I could also take Marlena, and that would be an extra civil action to take the breakthrough as well as these cards. So that's another line that definitely could be highly considered. Marlena obviously would be very good for me. I did feel she was a little bit maybe of a win war card for me, because again, I'm in a position where as long as I don't get a big war against me, I should almost certainly win. That being said, Marlena would also help me defend against a big war because of her tactic doubling. On the other hand, I maybe am perhaps waiting for Gandhi in the game, because if I have such a huge culture advantage, then Gandhi is probably better than Marlena, because if I got him, that would make it much less likely that Sakich could get a big war against me. So maybe it is better not to take Marlena then, just because I don't really need her, and Gandhi is a safer leader to pick. It's kind of a tricky turn. I can see multiple defensible lines. I draw 2 more bonus cards, so lots of bonus cards as well as an aggression. Sakich tries an aggression against me. You know, understandable, might as well try, but I do have more than enough bonus cards to defend. I also get rid of my aggression that I would definitely not be using. Sakich upgrades their second mine. Does take Marlena after all, which, Sakich... We'll talk about this more at the end of the game. I think it's a defensible pick, though. Mainly as a, how can Sakich come back and win? I think Marlena offers a possibility to come back and win, because she might help him get a big war going, as well as get Sakich more culture from the movies. Maybe could also potentially help them get a big Hollywood, so I think Marlena is definitely a defensible pick here. They also take a reserves, as well as a patriotism, as well as a communism, so probably planning on a big war, which makes sense. Just like the 2 operas were revealed side by side, the 2 movies are as well. So I do indeed use the reserves for food to be able to get a second opera. This represents 5 culture with Shakespeare pair, which is definitely a whole lot. So I definitely wanted to do it with the urban growth. So the question, I think, is what else to do on this turn. There are some options here. Let's see what I end up doing. Oh, I destroy a lot to build another opera. That, yeah, I think that makes sense. Just get as much culture going, because another way to make yourself kinda less vulnerable to a big war is just to have such an overwhelming culture advantage that even a pretty big war isn't enough to swing the game. And so, you know, I don't really need this lab anymore. I mean, the downside of doing the play this way, though, is that I will be 1 sign short of playing strategy next turn. So that is an unfortunate aspect of doing it this way. But maybe I won't need the strategy next turn anyway. I do have 5 military actions regardless. I do take the engineering genius. This one, though, is a little more questionable to me. I think the patriotism probably would have been, arguably would have been better. I mean, just to help protect me more. And maybe the urban growth, although I did finish. So maybe I could have taken the urban growth instead of destroying this like this. So that costs 2 civil actions. The reserves would also be nice to take to let me pop next turn. Engineering genius, I was kind of looking forward to maybe getting the Hollywood, but that might also just be win more. Like, at this point, like, do I really need the Hollywood to win? Probably not. I should probably be focusing on defending myself instead. So from that perspective, instead of taking this and building the opera like this, I could have used those 4 civil actions instead to take a patriotism and a reserves. And looking at it now, I think that would have been much better than doing it this way, actually. So I think this was a bad turn on my end. I draw an impact of technology, an impact of competition. Probably not a Ventil Seed, but maybe, as well as a tactic that I won't use. Sakich Seas reveals the strategic territory. I wasn't willing to bet too much into it because I don't have a free population next turn, so I won't be able to rebuild my tactic if I put it in, and so I think I would be open to an aggression if I spent more than one of my bonus cards. So that's why I only bid 5. Thus, Sakich is able to win it for a Rifleman and a bonus card. At least that cost them a little bit with the Riflemen instead of the Knights. They increase their population, play the Patriotism to rebuild that Rifleman, as well as a cannon, taking movies for Melina, play a copy of reserves for food, as well as take a patriotism. And unfortunately, doing it this way means they're in corruption. But if they increase the population, they would still be in corruption, and they would be unhappy, so they wouldn't be able to put it into the military. So this patriotism is like +2 rocks for them, because they get +4 from it, but they have -2 from corruption. But they didn't really have a better way to get out of corruption anyway. Maybe. They could have built a movie to get out of corruption, potentially, but they're probably setting up for a big war, and they don't want to put 11 rocks into movies. As for my turn, I snap took this tanks as soon as it showed up. Definitely an extremely powerful attack with my hussars, and will make it a lot harder for Sakich to get winning war against me. So this was a fortunate... The card row was fortunate for me, and that it let me get this copy of tanks, for sure. I also take this reserves that I didn't take last turn, either for food or rocks. It could definitely be useful for either. And I do choose to play the tanks. I think this opens up hand space. Yeah, it opens up hand space for military build-up, which is also going to be a good card to stop Sakich from getting too big a war against me. And I also upgrade 2 knights to tanks. After all, I have such an overwhelming culture advantage that, again, only way I'll probably lose is if Sakich gets a big war against me and doing it. And so there's no reason, I think, not to upgrade these knights to tanks, even though it doesn't make me strongest, just to prepare for a big war. Again, even though I did get the tanks, it was a little bit maybe unlucky for me that Gandhi wasn't on the row. I would definitely have liked to play him this turn, but that's how it is. Discard my tactics that I won't use, and draw another tactic I won't use as one aggression, and an impact of wonders that I might seed. And Sakich does, after all, declare a war of culture against me. With the patriotism, they have 2 military actions left, as well as enough rocks to build 2 air forces, and Melina lets them copy a tactic, which gets them up to 60 strength in total. Not a huge amount, but it's gonna be more than I have, at least. Unfortunately, doing this war does cost Sakich severely by putting them in rebellion, which most importantly means they won't be able to get any rock production this turn, as well as other production, but the rock, I think, is the biggest deal for them. So it also means, the way they put it this way, it looks like they won't be able to get any movies this game. So this is a major cost of doing the war. They were out of civil actions to get out of rebellion. They spent all of their civil actions doing it this way. So we can see how me taking that code of laws way back when ended up mattering probably a lot. Uprising instead of rebellion, whatever. So I do play my with nationalism and my military build-up to give me resources to upgrade all of my tanks. This puts me at 45 strength, meaning that Sakich will have a 30 culture swing against me, which is a fair amount, but as we can see, it's not going to be close to enough to make up for a culture difference. As for remaining civil actions, I do elect Gandhi this turn. Maybe Sakich now, with only 3 military actions left, isn't really going to be in a position to get a big war against me. On the other hand, they could potentially do an aggression. I mean, I have the bonus quest to defend 1 aggression, but maybe not a second one if they play a second one. And just in general, I felt that I was ahead by so much that I was comfortable losing the additional culture from Shakespeare just to be a little bit safer and make sure that Sakich can't possibly come back in this game. I do take the revolutionary idea. I'm still a little short on science. I'll probably want to spend it on something. I don't really want any of these other cards, especially with Gandhi. Things like the military theory shouldn't be important. And I take also this copy of revolutionary idea. I guess the more important reason to take it was as a denial for Sakich, because if Sakich got it, then on their following turn, they would have enough science to plan movies and build potentially 2 of them. So this is actually the last copy of revolutionary idea, because the second one is going to be discarded in my turn. So if I take this revolutionary idea, Sakich will not be able to get any movies at all this game. So that's the main reason I took it. With my last of action, I took the agriculture. This one I'm not sure about. I mean, you know, it could possibly be useful for impacts, but I think the revolutionary idea, the second one, probably would have been better. to maybe, well, I guess the fundamentalism and democracy are gone, so it wouldn't let me get a government form, but it probably would have been better and let me get, you know, something, probably. It might not matter too much at this point, but I think it probably would have been better. Anyway, I draw another tactic that I won't use. Sakech. Oh wait, sorry, it's a 40 culture swing because of the extra 5 culture from the extra 10 culture swing from the more culture. So yeah, 40 culture swing, definitely significant, but I was ahead by so much that I'm still ahead by a lot. Sakech builds another arena to get out of Uprising and takes an urban growth. H4 begins. I seed my Impact of Wonders. Even though I'm weakest, I mean, the Impact of Wonders is a beneficial impact for me. Vast territory is revealed. I think it doesn't matter too much, especially since I'm Gandhi, but I do end up winning it. It at least will be good for me for a potential, like, impact population or something. I take the United Nations Wonder. This is a pure denial because well, okay, I could have actually, no, I'm 1 rock short. Yeah, I'm 1 rock short of finishing the United Nations, unfortunately. Well, with the reserves, but I don't have the civil actions for it. So, but taking it as a pure denial, because Sakech on their turn would potentially be able to take it and finish it. And so I figured that denying Sakech the at least 12 culture they would get from it is better than anything else I could do at these civil actions. The other thing I do is upgrade a farm for impact purposes, mainly. So I guess the vast territory, I mean, winning it could also be good for, like, an impact of colonies if Sakech sealed that. And it's not like I need that military unit when I'm Gandhi. Sakech Siege reveals the refugees. Basically, that's mostly just a 6 culture swing at this point. And they do communism revolution. Doesn't have the science, really, for anything else. Oh, going into the final impacts. Yeah, I'm ahead by a lot. So, yeah, first in the Impact of Wonders, that gives me +5 culture against Sakech. Next is Impact of Strength, that gives Sakech +10 culture. And then the Impact of Culture, which cancels out the Impact of Strength. And so I ended up winning this game by 71 points. This game, I think there's kind of not much to talk about. This is mostly a showcase of how important Shakespeare and Bach are in 2-player games. Sakech got a 40 culture swing with the war, and I still won by 71. So that just goes to show why you really can't depend on coming back militarily if your opponent gets a culture lead in H2 and you don't. Sakech in our chat mentioned that they thought they shouldn't have taken Morlena, but as I said, I actually think Morlena was a good pick for them in that situation, because not only did she enable Sakech to double up on armies, but she also could have potentially gotten them bonus with movies, plus a Hollywood, which ended up being at the end of the game, but maybe it wouldn't have. So I actually thought one potential path for Sakech to come back could have been use Morlena to get a big war, while also building movies with her and getting a big Hollywood. I mean, it would have been unlikely for that all to line up, but Sakech, I think, was behind enough that taking a big swing like that was justified. Definitely Sakech's bigger mistake was, much bigger mistake, was not taking an opera in H2, thus making it such that neither Shakespeare nor Bach were really an option for them, thus letting me get Shakespeare unopposed, which is what let me have such a huge culture advantage. And now we can take a quick look at the standings, so we can see that my victory against Sakech makes some things decided. I am now guaranteed to finish ahead of El Chupacabra, because El Chupacabra finished all 8 of the games. And Sakech, unfortunately, is also now guaranteed to finish last in the group, because the best they can do is get 5 more points from the last 3-player game, and that will not be enough to get them ahead of DB Starman. So those have been decided, but the fate of the group as a whole has not, because I still have 2 games left to play against DB Starman, and if DB Starman wins both of those, they will end up with 23.5 points, which will be above me. So I can't rest on my laurels. I need to, you know, stay strong to the end and battle DB Starman to decide who goes to upper bracket and who goes to lower bracket. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, please leave a comment if you have any praise or constructive criticism on either my play or my video making. I'm always looking to improve on both. And whether or not you leave a comment, I hope you enjoyed this video.